The Little Cowboy Who Rode the Wind. Once upon a time, in the wide rolling plains of the American West, where the sky stretched forever and the grass danced in the breeze, there lived a boy named Eli. Eli was smaller than most of the children in his town, but he was as brave as the tallest oak and as curious as a prairie fox. He wore a battered hat too big for his head, a pair of worn boots, and a bright red bandana that fluttered like a flame around his neck. Eli's family owned a little ranch at the edge of town. The days there started with the golden sun peeking over the hills, painting the world in warm light. Eli's chores began before the rooster crowed, feeding the chickens, filling the water troughs, and helping his mother gather eggs. But what Eli loved most was tending to the horses. He would brush their coats until they shone and whisper stories into their ears. Yet there was one thing Eli wished for more than anything else: adventure. He'd heard tales of cowboys riding wild mustangs, crossing endless deserts, and finding treasure hidden beneath the cottonwood trees. But Eli's legs were still too short for his father's saddle, and his parents said he was too young to ride out into the unknown. At night, Eli would lie in his bed and listen to the wind singing through the cracks in the old barn. It sounded like laughter, or sometimes like a secret message just for him. He made a promise to himself: someday I'll ride farther than anyone has ever gone, maybe even ride the wind itself. One evening, as the sun melted behind the hills and the sky blushed with pink and violet, Eli finished his chores and sat on the fence, watching the horses graze. The wind picked up, rustling the grass and making his bandana flutter. Suddenly, a gentle voice whispered, barely louder than a breeze, "Do you want to ride farther than the horizon?" Eli looked around, but saw no one. He shrugged, thinking it was just his imagination, but then the wind swirled around him and lifted his hat right off his head. As he scrambled to catch it, the wind seemed to giggle. "I'm here, little cowboy," the wind whispered, swirling playfully around him. "Would you like to ride with me?" Eli's heart thumped with excitement. "I'd love to," he answered, not sure if he was talking to the wind or to his own wild dreams. "Very well," said the wind, "but you must promise to hold on tight and keep your eyes open. There's much to see and even more to learn." Eli nodded. The wind wrapped around him like a soft, invisible rope and lifted him gently off the fence. His hat floated back onto his head, snug and secure. With a whoosh, they soared up, 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 higher than the tallest barn, higher than the clouds, until the ranch below looked no bigger than a postage stamp. Eli gasped in wonder. He could see the whole world stretching out before him, the golden plains, the silver rivers winding through the land like ribbons, and the distant mountains blue with mystery. "Where shall we go first, little cowboy?" asked the wind, its voice warm and kind. Eli thought for a moment. "Can we visit the coyote who sings to the moon?" With a laugh, the wind whisked him toward the hills. They swooped down into a quiet valley where a silver coyote stood on a rock, howling up at the glowing moon. The coyote's song was sad and beautiful, full of stories. Eli listened, and for the first time, he understood the language of the wild. The coyote sang of lonely nights and starry skies, of chasing dreams and never giving up hope. "Thank you, coyote," Eli whispered, and the coyote nodded, its eyes wise and gentle. Next, Eli asked to visit the tallest tree in the forest. The wind carried him over dark, whispering woods, where ancient trees reached for the sky. At the center stood a towering redwood, its branches heavy with the weight of 1,000 years. Nestled among its leaves, birds sang songs of faraway places, and squirrels told jokes only they understood. Eli climbed onto a sturdy branch, and the tree shivered with laughter. "Little cowboy," the tree rumbled, "your heart is strong, and your spirit is as wild as the wind. Never forget who you are." The wind carried Eli onward, over sparkling lakes where fish leapt from the water like living rainbows, and across deserts where the sand glimmered gold and purple in the sunset. In every place, Eli listened and learned. he met a wise old tortoise who had walked the earth longer than most mountains, and a family of eagles who soared so high they touched the stars. At last, as the night grew deep and the world below glowed with moonlight, the wind slowed and drifted gently down to Eli's home. The ranch looked peaceful, the horses sleeping in their stalls, the chickens huddled close for warmth. "Thank you, wind," Eli said, his eyes shining with all he had seen. The wind wrapped him in a gentle hug. "Remember, little cowboy, the world is full of stories, and every adventure begins with a single step, or sometimes a single gust of wind." Eli landed softly on the fence, his boots touching the wood as lightly as a feather. His hat was still on his head, and his red bandana fluttered with pride. He looked out across the plains, feeling taller and braver than ever before. From that night on, Eli was never afraid to dream big or to ride out into the unknown. And sometimes, when the wind danced through the grass and whispered secrets in his ear, Eli would smile, tip his hat, and remember the night he rode the wind. As the days passed, Eli became known around the town as the little cowboy who rode the wind. People would come from miles around to hear his stories. Tales of the singing coyote, the ancient tree, the rainbow fish, and the wise old tortoise. Eli always told his stories with a twinkle in his eye, and when the wind blew just right, it almost seemed to laugh along with him. Eli grew taller, but he never outgrew his sense of wonder. He learned to ride the ranch horses, racing across the fields with the wind at his back. He helped his family, cared for the animals, and shared his adventures with anyone who wanted to listen. And sometimes, late at night, when everyone else was asleep, Eli would sit on the fence with his hat pulled low and his eyes on the horizon, waiting for the wind to call him once more. For he knew deep down that the greatest adventures are born from curiosity, courage, and a heart as wild and free as the wind itself. One chilly morning, as the first frost sparkled on the grass, Eli woke to find a mysterious feather lying on his windowsill. It shimmered with colors he'd never seen before, blues and greens and golds that shifted in the light. Eli picked up the feather, feeling a gentle breeze swirl around him. He tucked the feather into his hat and ran outside. The wind was waiting for him, playful and full of energy. "Are you ready for another adventure, little cowboy?" it asked. Eli grinned. "Always." This time the wind swept him up higher than ever before, up past the clouds and into a world where the stars told stories and the moon winked with mischief. Eli met new friends, a fox who could vanish in a blink, a bear who knew every constellation, and a rabbit who raced comets across the sky. Each friend shared a lesson. The fox taught Eli to trust his instincts, the bear showed him the importance of patience, and the rabbit reminded him to always find joy in the journey. As dawn approached, the wind carried Eli home, and he tucked his magical feather under his pillow. From then on, whenever he needed courage or wisdom, he would hold the feather and remember the friends he'd made and the lessons he'd learned. Eli grew older, but the magic of the wind never faded. On windy days, he would gather the children of the town and tell them his stories. He'd show them the feather and teach them to listen to the world around them, the songs of the birds, the whisper of the trees, and the secrets carried by the wind. And so, the legend of the little cowboy who rode the wind was passed down from one generation to the next. Children would dream of flying with the wind, of meeting coyotes and ancient trees, and of finding their own magical feathers. Whenever a child felt afraid or unsure, they would remember Eli's adventures and find the courage to chase their own dreams. For the wind, after all, is always waiting for those who are brave enough to ride it. And if you listen closely, on a quiet night when the stars are bright and the wind sings through the grass, you might just hear the laughter of the little cowboy as he rides the wind once more, exploring new places, meeting new friends, and discovering that the world is full of endless stories, just waiting to be told. Eli's adventures didn't stop with that magical night. As the seasons changed and the ranch grew busy with life, Eli continued to help his family. But now, With every task, he carried the wisdom of his journeys. He treated every animal with kindness, spoke to the trees as old friends, and listened to the wind for new secrets. One spring day, a fierce storm rolled in from the mountains. The wind howled, and the sky turned dark as night. The ranch's horses grew frightened, and the youngest colt, a little brown foal named Star, broke free from the fence, galloping into the wild plains. Eli's parents called for help, but the storm was too strong for anyone to see beyond a few yards. Remembering all he had learned, Eli wrapped his red bandana tight, tucked the magical feather in his hat, and whispered to the wind, "Please help me find Star." The wind answered with a gentle push, guiding Eli through the swirling rain and blinding lightning. He followed the wind's whispers, listening for the faintest sound of hooves or a frightened whinny. At last, deep in the heart of the storm, Eli found Star trembling under a cottonwood tree. He spoke softly, telling the foal stories of bravery and hope. With the wind's help, Eli led Star back home, both of them soaked but safe. When the storm passed, a rainbow arched across the sky. Eli's parents hugged him tight, and the townsfolk cheered. From that day on, everyone knew that Eli was not just a little cowboy. He was a hero, guided by the wind and his own brave heart. Years passed, and Eli grew into a young man. He traveled far and wide, sharing his stories and helping those in need. But no matter where he went, he always returned to his ranch, to the wide open plains and the whispering wind. He never lost his sense of wonder, nor his ability to listen to the world around him. And when children asked him how he became so brave, Eli would smile and say, "All it takes is a little courage, a lot of curiosity, and a friend like the wind." So if you ever find yourself standing on a quiet plain, feeling the wind tug at your hair and whisper in your ear, remember the little cowboy who rode the wind. Perhaps, if you're brave and your heart is open, you too will find adventure waiting just beyond the horizon. For the world is wide, the sky is endless, and the wind is always ready to carry you to places you've only dreamed of. And so, the story of Eli, the little cowboy who rode the wind, lives on. An endless adventure, a timeless tale, and a reminder to us all that the greatest journeys begin with a single hopeful step into the unknown. Even now, on the ranch where Eli grew up, the wind still sings through the grass. Some say that on certain nights, you can hear the laughter of a little cowboy and the gentle whisper of the wind, carrying stories across the plains for all who wish to dream. And if you ever see a red bandana fluttering in the breeze, or find a feather shimmering with magical colors, know that adventure is near, and the spirit of the little cowboy lives on in every curious heart. So whenever you feel the wind on your face, close your eyes, listen closely, and remember, your own adventure awaits, if only you're brave enough to ride the wind.